The human man arrived at Station Halcyon with one small bag and many quiet hopes. He was not a soldier or a hero. He was a systems technician, trained to fix broken climate units and aging power lines. He expected routine work, long shifts, and polite distance from the many alien species that passed through the station every day. What he did not expect was to be assigned a shared living space. Station Halcyon floated at the edge of a blue star, far from Earth and far from any single empire. It was a neutral place, built for trade, research, and cooperation. Space was limited, so housing was shared by default. Humans were still new to deep interstellar life, and many of them were placed wherever space allowed. That was how the human found himself standing outside a small apartment door, reading the name on the panel again and again. Saraith of the Lurin. He had heard of the Lurin before, tall, graceful, with skin that shimmered like soft moonlight, known for logic, emotional restraint, and strict cultural rules. They were respected but also distant. Most species found them difficult to read. The door slid open before he could knock again. She stood there, calm and still, her eyes a deep silver blue. She was taller than him by a head, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. Light from the hallway reflected faintly off the smooth patterns along her arms. "You are the human," she said. Her voice was steady, almost musical, but carefully controlled. "Yes," he replied quickly. "I'm assigned here if that's okay. If not, I can ask for a reassignment." She studied him for a moment longer, then stepped aside. "The station assigned you." "Enter," she said. The apartment was simple. 2 sleeping areas, a shared kitchen space, and a narrow common room with a wide window looking out into the stars. Everything was clean, carefully organized, and very quiet. They spoke little at first. The human unpacked slowly, trying not to disturb anything. Saraith returned to her work terminal, her long fingers moving with precise speed. The silence was not uncomfortable, but it was heavy, like a rule neither of them had spoken aloud. Over the next few days, they settled into a routine. The human worked long hours repairing cooling systems in the lower rings of the station. He came back tired, sometimes frustrated, but always polite. He cooked simple meals, always asking before using shared space. Saraith observed him quietly at first, then gradually began to join him for meals. Their conversations were careful and short. She asked about Earth. He asked about Lurin architecture. Neither pushed too far. Trust grew slowly, like light at the edge of a long night. Then the station alarms sounded. The warning echoed through every corridor, every living space. A solar storm had erupted without warning, far stronger than predicted. The station's shields activated, but external travel was immediately suspended. No ships could dock or leave. A station-wide message followed. "Attention all residents. Due to the severity of the stellar disturbance, Station Halcyon is now under full lockdown. Estimated duration, 3 standard weeks. Please remain in your assigned living quarters unless directed otherwise. 3 weeks. The human felt a small knot of worry tighten in his chest. Supplies would be fine, the station was prepared for emergencies, but being confined was never easy. He glanced toward Saraith. She was very still. Her breathing had changed, slow but deeper than before. One of her hands rested lightly against the edge of the table, fingers tense. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. "This timing is unfortunate," he frowned slightly. "Because of the storm." "Yes," she said, "and because of my people's cycle." He waited. He had learned that silence was often the most respectful response. "My species experiences a biological season," she continued. "It increases emotional sensitivity and internal pressure. We usually return to our homeworlds during this time. Isolation is preferred." "Oh," he said, "I didn't know, I'm sorry." "It is not your fault," she replied. "The station records did not note it. Humans are not yet required to study such details." The days that followed were different. Saraith became more withdrawn, spending long hours in her sleeping area. When she did emerge, her control seemed strained, like a finely balanced system under too much load. She avoided eye contact. Her movements were slower, more deliberate. The human noticed everything. He adjusted his routine without being asked. He kept the common space quiet. He prepared meals and left them covered on the counter so she could eat when she wished. He spoke softly, never suddenly. One evening, the station's artificial lighting flickered. Power fluctuations were spreading as the solar storm intensified. Saraith stood near the window, her hands clenched at her sides. "My people fear this season," she said suddenly, without turning. Not because of what we feel, but because of what others have done to us during it. He felt his chest tighten. I'm sorry that happened, he said. Truly. She finally looked at him then. Her eyes were bright, not with desire, but with something closer to fear. Many species see vulnerability as opportunity, she said. You remain. He nodded. This is my home right now, so is this apartment. I'm not going anywhere. The power went out an hour later. Emergency lights activated, casting the room in a soft red glow. The station message system announced that repairs were ongoing, but full restoration would take time. In other sections of the station, panic spread. Some species reacted poorly to confinement and stress. Security alerts increased. Distant sounds echoed through the corridors. Inside the apartment, the human lit a small portable lamp and set it on the table. It's not much, he said, offering a small smile, but it helps. Saraith watched him, her expression conflicted. You show restraint, she said. That is not common, he shrugged. Where I come from, self-control is how we survive. Space is big, people are different. If we don't respect each other, nothing works. That night, a loud impact shook the station. Something struck the outer shield. The apartment lights flickered again. Instinctively, the human moved, placing himself slightly in front of Saraith without thinking. It was not a protective stance learned in training. It was simple reflex. She noticed. Her hand brushed his arm, light and uncertain. She froze, then slowly pulled away, as if afraid of crossing a line she did not want to break. I did not ask for your protection, she said quietly. I know, he replied. I chose it. Silence followed, heavy but not empty. As the days passed, they talked more. Not about the season directly, but about fears, about expectations placed on them by their species. The humans spoke of Earth's long history of mistakes and growth. Saraith spoke of a culture built on control, where emotion was seen as weakness. You do not fear my condition, she said one evening. I respect it, he answered. That's different. Something shifted then, not instinct, not biology, something slower and stronger. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Inside, two very different beings shared space, choice, and quiet trust. And neither of them yet understood how much that choice would change everything. The lockdown continued, and time inside the apartment began to feel strange. Days blended together, marked only by station announcements and the slow change of light through the wide window. Outside, the blue star still burned angrily, its storms brushing against the station's shields like invisible waves. Inside, the space felt smaller, but also quieter, as if the universe itself had leaned closer to listen. Saraith's condition did not suddenly worsen, but it did deepen. Her movements became slower, more careful. Her emotions, once locked behind perfect control, now surfaced in small, fragile ways. Sometimes she would pause in the middle of a task, her fingers trembling slightly, as if holding herself together required constant effort. The human noticed, but he did not stare. He had learned that attention could feel like pressure. Instead, he stayed present in small ways. He kept the temperature steady at a level comfortable for her species. He adjusted lighting to be softer. When station alerts sounded, he calmly explained what they meant so she would not imagine worse outcomes. One evening, distant shouting echoed through the corridor outside their apartment. A security alert followed, warning residents to remain inside. Another species had reacted badly to confinement. There had been damage, injuries, and panic. Saraith flinched at the sound. They are losing control, she said quietly. This is why my people isolate. The human nodded. Stress changes people, but it doesn't define them. She looked at him with a mix of curiosity and disbelief. You speak as if choice is stronger than biology. He thought for a moment before answering. Maybe not stronger, but important enough to fight for. That night, Saraith did not retreat fully into her sleeping area. She sat on the edge of the common room, her posture tense, as if ready to withdraw at any moment. The human remained across the room, repairing a small station-issued tool that had stopped working. Minutes passed in silence. Human, she said softly. He looked up. Yes. If my behavior becomes difficult, she said carefully, choosing each word, you are permitted to leave the room. He shook his head gently. I'll stay unless you ask me to go. She absorbed that answer slowly, as if testing its weight. As the days went on, they began to share more of themselves. Not dramatic confessions, but honest fragments. The human spoke about growing up on a crowded Earth, where privacy was rare and compromise was necessary. He spoke of learning patience, not because it was easy, but because it prevented harm. Saraith spoke of her homeworld cities of glass and light, where every action was measured, every emotion controlled. She admitted that many of her people feared humans not because they were violent, but because they felt deeply and openly. "You are unpredictable," she said. He smiled slightly. "So are solar storms." She made a small sound that might have been a laugh. It was brief and surprised, as if it had escaped without permission. She quickly regained control, but the moment lingered between them. The station's power situation worsened on the 10th day. Emergency lights remained on longer than usual. Temperature controls faltered. In some sections, artificial gravity fluctuated. Maintenance teams worked constantly, including the human, who was now required to stay close to his living area in case of sudden evacuation. During one repair shift inside their own apartment corridor, a violent tremor shook the station. The floor tilted briefly. Objects fell. The human lost his balance and hit the wall hard. Saraith reacted instantly. She was at his side before he could speak, her hands hovering uncertainly near his shoulders, afraid to touch but unable to move away. "Are you injured?" she asked, her voice tight. "I'm okay," he said, wincing slightly. "Just surprised." She studied him closely, her eyes sharp and bright. Her breathing was uneven. "You place yourself in danger too easily," she said. He met her gaze. "Someone has to fix things." That answer unsettled her. On her world, danger was avoided at all costs. Sacrifice was calculated, rarely personal. Yet here was a human who accepted risk without drama, without expectation of reward. Later that night, the station suffered its worst incident yet. A section of the outer ring lost power completely. Emergency bulkheads sealed. Communication lagged. Rumors spread through fragmented messages. Fear moved faster than facts. In the apartment, the lights dimmed to their lowest level. The room felt cold. Saraith's control finally began to crack. She paced slowly, her hands pressed together, her expression strained. Her voice, when she spoke, was no longer perfectly steady. "I am overwhelmed," she admitted. "This season amplifies everything: fear, awareness, attachment." The last word hung in the air between them. The human set aside what he was doing and stood, but he did not approach. He kept a respectful distance, his hands visible, his posture calm. "Tell me what you need," he said. She hesitated. "I do not know. My instincts demand closeness, yet my mind warns me away." "This contradiction is painful," he nodded slowly. "Then we follow your mind, we go at your pace." Her shoulders loosened slightly at that. In the corridor outside, something crashed. A loud impact, followed by alarms. The station shuddered again. Without thinking, the human moved to the door, checking the seal, making sure it was locked and reinforced. He positioned himself between the door and the rest of the room. Saraith watched him, her eyes wide. "You assume threat," she said. "I prepare for it," he replied. "That way we don't panic if it comes." She stepped closer slowly until they stood a short distance apart. She could feel the warmth of him, steady and real. Her instincts surged, urging her to close the distance completely. She stopped herself. "This is difficult," she admitted. "I know," he said quietly, "and you're doing great." No one had ever said that to her during this season. The alarms eventually faded. The danger passed for now, but something inside Saraith had shifted. She sat down heavily, her strength finally giving way. The human hesitated only a second before kneeling nearby, not touching her, but close enough that she would not feel alone. For a long time, neither spoke. When she finally did, her voice was soft and vulnerable. "My people believe humans are ruled by desire," she said, "yet you show restraint even when it costs you comfort." He looked at her, his expression serious. "Restraint doesn't mean lack of feeling. It means choosing not to let feeling hurt someone." She considered that deeply. As the night passed, she leaned slightly toward him, not enough to cross a boundary, but enough to show trust. He remained still, letting her decide. That choice meant everything to her. By the time the station lights brightened again, Saraith understood something new and unsettling. Her feelings were no longer only biological. They were shaped by safety, by respect, by choice. And that realization frightened her more than the mating season ever had. Because it meant that when the season ended, what she felt might remain. And she was no longer sure she wanted it to fade. The storm finally began to weaken. At first, no one noticed. Station Halcyon had been under strain for so long that constant danger felt normal. But slowly, the alarms became less frequent. The lights stayed on longer. The artificial gravity stopped flickering. The blue star outside the window still burned bright, but its violent movements had calmed. A station-wide message arrived one quiet morning. Attention all residents. Stellar activity is decreasing. Lockdown status will be lifted in 4 standard days. Prepare for gradual return to normal operations. 4 days. The words settled into the apartment like a gentle weight. For the human, it meant returning to work, to routines, to a life that looked familiar. For Sereth, it meant something far more complicated. Her season was ending. The intense internal pressure that had shaped every moment slowly eased. Her breathing became steadier. The constant tension behind her eyes softened. She regained the control her species valued so deeply. And yet, something remained. She noticed it in the quiet moments, in the way she listened for the human's footsteps when he moved through the apartment, in the strange sense of absence when he worked in another section of the station, in the way her thoughts returned to him without effort. This was not supposed to happen. According to everything she had been taught, once the season passed, the pull would fade. Memory would remain, but urgency would not. Emotion would return to its ordered state. But what she felt now was calm, steady, and clear. It frightened her. The human sensed the change too, though he did not understand it fully. Sereth seemed more composed, more like she had been when they first met. Yet there was also a distance in her, a careful quiet that felt different from before. He did not push. On the second day before lockdown ended, station security requested his presence. There had been an incident during the storm, and witnesses had mentioned his actions. He returned hours later, tired but thoughtful. "They asked me questions," he said as he set his tools down. "About how we handled the lockdown, about you." Sereth looked up from where she sat near the window. "What did you tell them?" "The truth," he replied. "That you followed protocol, that you showed restraint, that you were not a danger to anyone." Her fingers tightened slightly. "My people are often judged during this season," she said. "Restrictions are placed on us, sometimes relocation." "I know," he said gently. "That's why I spoke clearly." She studied him. "You gain nothing by doing so," he smiled faintly. "I gain peace of mind." That night, Sereth did something her instincts had warned her against. She asked a question. "When the lockdown ends," she said quietly, "you may request reassignment." "Yes," he said. "Shared housing often changes after emergencies." "Will you?" she asked. The human paused. He had thought about this more than once. "I don't know," he said honestly. "If you want space, I'll respect that. If you want me to stay, I'd like that too." She turned back toward the stars, her reflection faint in the glass. "My people would say that this connection should end now," she said, "that it was created under biological influence and stress." "And what do you say?" he asked. She did not answer right away. On the third day, the station council announced a formal review. Multiple species had shown unexpected behavioral changes during the storm. Humans, in particular, had been noted for their calming influence in shared environments. Sereth was summoned as a representative of her species. The human accompanied her as an observer. The council chamber was large and filled with beings of many forms. Light shifted across polished surfaces. Voices echoed softly. Sereth stood tall and composed. No one would guess how uncertain she felt inside. When asked about her experience, she spoke carefully. "I followed my training," she said. "I maintained control, I avoided harm." A council member leaned forward. "And the human," she hesitated, then chose honesty. "He respected my boundaries. He offered support without demand. He did not exploit my vulnerability." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Another voice spoke. "Do you believe this behavior is typical of humans?" Sereth glanced briefly toward him. He stood quietly, hands folded, not meeting her gaze, giving her complete freedom. "Yes," she said firmly. "I believe it is a choice humans make, again and again." The council adjourned with no penalties, only recommendations. Increased cooperation, further study, trust cautiously offered. As they walked back through the corridor, Sereth felt something loosen inside her chest. "You spoke strongly," the human said. "I spoke truthfully," she replied. That evening, the station lights shifted back to normal. The lockdown officially ended, doors unlocked, corridors filled with movement again, normal life resumed. Inside the apartment, Sereth stood alone for a long moment. The quiet was different now, not heavy, empty. She found the human in the common room packing away emergency supplies. "It is over," she said. "Yes," he replied. "How do you feel?" She considered the question carefully. "Clear," she said, "and conflicted." He nodded, accepting that. I have made a decision, she continued. He looked up, attentive but calm. I will not request reassignment, she said. Not yet. His expression softened, but he did not smile. I do not believe what I feel is a result of the season, she said. If it were, it would have faded by now. What remains was built through safety, respect, and choice. She took a step closer, stopping at a distance that felt right. If you wish to leave, I will understand, she added. But if you stay, it must be as equals, without obligation. He met her eyes. I'll stay, he said, because I want to, not because I expect anything. For the first time since they met, Saraith allowed herself to relax fully in his presence. Not because of instinct, because of trust. In the days that followed, word spread through Station Halcyon. Humans were requested as mediators, technicians, shared housing partners. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they listened, adapted, and chose restraint. Saraith observed these changes quietly. One evening, she and the humans stood by the window again, watching ships come and go. My people believe strength is control, she said. Humans have taught me that strength can also be kindness. He smiled gently. We're still learning too. The unexpected encounter had not been dramatic or physical. It had been something far more powerful. Two beings, different in every way, choosing understanding over fear. And in that choice, the galaxy shifted just a little toward something better.